Christmas time, it's all about traditions. And our tradition here at Let's Celebrate TV is showing you every year how to make my Scottish shortbread. Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Let's Celebrate TV. I'm your host, Peter Lee. On this channel, we teach you all about celebrating. We show you recipes for food, hors d'oeuvres, cocktails, and we share entertaining tips. We try to keep it all very simple, especially for all of those of you who say you just can't do it, because we know you really can. So if you like this episode, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and watch a new episode every single week. Now today, it's Christmas time, of course, and our celebration is all about our favorite Scottish shortbread. So, you know, Christmas and Hanukkah and all the holidays are all about traditions, and our tradition here at Let's Celebrate TV is that every year we're going to show you our Scottish shortbread recipe, because what other way to cook out for Christmas is there? It's just wonderful. So let's get started. I've got all my ingredients. Let's talk about the pan first. Here's a selection of pans. Now you've seen my tried and true Scottish shortbread mold. This is just like the one my mother used, so that's what I always use every year to start things off. They're very hard to find. You can sometimes find them on eBay, but they're getting harder and harder to find. We'll put this aside. You can find a lot of others online. For example, this one. Now, I have several of these, and I use these all year round and throughout Christmas time too. So we'll have the links for these up in the comment section like we do every year, so you can find them online too. If you don't have these, if you don't have my favorite pan, you can just use a square pan, or you can even use a pie plate. It's all fine. So let's get these out of the way. Now, my pan here is nice and shiny because I sprayed it with cooking spray, and that's the first thing you want to do. Just give it a good spray and set it aside. A little quieter than I did. All right. Starts with 2 sticks of butter. Now your butter, you want it to be soft, room temperature. So all I did was I put it in the bowl last night, put some cling film over it, and I let it sit overnight. It's not going to go bad. It's not going to go rancid. You don't want it too soft or liquid, because then you get a galoppy shortbread and you'll have to add more flour. If it's too hard, you'll get little pockets of butter. Those will steam when you bake it, and then you get a flaky pie crust-like texture, and that's not what you want either. You want a tender, rich shortbread. So this is right about where I like it. You can just pull your finger through it, and it's nice and soft and pliable. Now, first important rule, use real butter. You must use real butter. If you object to real butter, then go and make something else, because it's just not going to be the same. It won't taste as good. It won't come out the same. So use real butter. Next, flour, 2 cups. Now you don't have to be a pastry chef. You don't have to be super exact and weigh it out by volume or anything. 2 cups. 1, 2. Now I know all my pastry chef friends are cringing because I just scooped that in and packed it instead of shoveling it in with a spoon. This is a very forgiving recipe. Confectioner sugar is the next ingredient. 3/4 cup. What I like to do is just use my finger on the side and kind of level it. 1, 2, and 3. Salt is the 4th and final ingredient. See how easy? 4 ingredients. Now I happen to be using salted butter because that's what I like to use, and I'm familiar with this brand, so I know how salty it is. So I know I just need a tiny pinch extra. And this is just going to help the sweetness kind of come together. If you're using unsalted butter, you want to use about 1/8 of a teaspoon, or a healthier pinch than that. Now, impeccably clean hands. We're going to mix this up. Now, I learned this recipe from my mother, and she could just knock these out one after another. She would always ever use one hand. So I'm going to try and channel her today and do it with just one hand. You know, I think if I'm going to channel my mother, I need something first. My mother usually had a martini next to her when she was mixing shortbreads. So this one's for you, Mom. Hope I get it right. Okay. So one hand, and you're just going to squeeze it all together and mix it in. It's very simple. Now, you could, if you wanted, do this in your stand mixer. I did one last week just to try it. And honestly, it didn't save me any time because you have to do it all on low speed or you get flour everywhere. I found it just as quick and just as easy to do it by hand. And besides, there's something about touching this and feeling it come together that just helps with the whole experience. So as I mix this, I should probably tell you about the first time I had Scottish shortbread. I remember it was a very little boy, sometime in the 70s, and this big box came from New York, and it was from my grandfather, who was from Scotland. And there were all kinds of treats inside. There was oat cakes and pastries, and this strange, plain-looking blonde squares. I didn't know what they were. So I asked my mother, and she said, "That's shortbread." She gave me a piece. Wow, what a difference. It was tender and buttery and sweet and just the best thing ever I'd ever tasted in my life. So that was my introduction to shortbread. Then, of course, she made it. And of course, I like my mom's better than my grandpa's, but I couldn't tell him that. Same recipe, but it was Mom. Alrighty, so this has almost come together, just that fast as I've been talking to you. See? All right, and there we go. And all I've dirtied is one hand. Let's move this. I'll come back to that later. Bring this over here. We'll switch into the mold. So you just bring it all up. Plop it right in. You don't have to let it rest or anything. Right in the mold. And all I'm doing is smoothing it out with my hands. So that's an even layer. And I'm really pushing it down into all the nooks and crannies so it picks up that beautiful print on it. The whole design. Now you could, if you wanted, certainly be a little fancier and use the bottom of a measuring cup and get a nice flat bottom. But I don't think it's necessary because this is going to be the bottom part anyway. You'll never see it. Now, why I say use your hands, you can feel when it's all in even layer. And there we go. Easy, right? Alrighty, now I'm going to bake this at 325 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. I'll check it at 30 minutes. And that's about when you start to smell it. What you're looking for is a pale golden, maybe a little darker golden around the edges. You don't want to go too much because then it'll just be overcooked and toasty and not quite as tender. So here we go, off to the ovens. Alrighty, we are out of the oven. It's been 35 minutes and I checked it at 30, gave it a couple more, and it came out perfectly. Now look at that. It's pale golden. I've got a little dark around the edge, and that's okay. So I've been letting this sit for about 15 minutes. And all I've done is I've taken my little paring knife, just run around the edges for paranoia's sake. So it should be fine. Okay, now I have these little sparkly discs that I found. I love buying these cardboard discs from the craft store because when you want to take these shortbreads to occasions and things, this is perfect. You don't have to worry about losing a plate. So here comes the moment of truth. Cross your fingers, say a prayer to some kitchen god somewhere. Here we go. Okay. I think I felt it release. Let's hope. Yeah. There we go. Scottish shortbread right out of the mold. And yeah, that was real. Now I'm going to cut this while it's warm, because if I wait for it to cool all the way, it might get a little crumbly. Now, there's a couple little spots where it might have stuck a little bit on the edge, and that's okay. It really doesn't matter. You can't really tell. Now, this particular pan makes 8 wedges, and I'm going to cut each of those wedges into half, which will give me 16 pieces. My mother had some fancy way of cutting all the pattern out, but she had a lot more people to feed than I do, so. All right. Just that simple. There's my 8. All righty, almost there. Now, what would you serve this with? It's good with coffee. It's good with eggnog. It's good with wine. It's good with anything, really. One more. Now, you really normally want to let this cool before you taste it, but I'm going to go ahead and sneak a piece, only because I've got about 10 more of these to make, so no one will notice if I just sneak a little piece out and taste it for you. Now, this is a little soft in the center and a little crumbly because it's warm, but that's okay. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for you. That's the taste of Christmas. It's just buttery, very tender, very melt in your mouth, a little bit sweet, and a taste of home. So here we are, Scottish shortbread, our new tradition that we'll make for you every year. Now, as always, I'm going to have this recipe up in the comment section on YouTube. We'll have all the links to the shortbread pans up there as well. And we'd love to hear from you. So contact us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and write us Facebook questions and comments there too. Send me pictures. Send me pictures if you make shortbread, or show me pictures of how you celebrate the holidays and your favorite dishes to make. So that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Peter Lee. Cheers.